The internet went crazy when Zoe Kravitz dropped a bombshell about Jason Momoa. What began as a casual, funny interview took a sharp turn when she said he is an evil piece of... At the time, it seemed like she was joking, but within hours, the clip had been taken out of context and started a storm of speculation. Was Jason Momoa, Hollywood's beloved action star and ultimate protector, actually hiding a darker side? Fans were shocked that this was the man who had been devoted to his family even after his breakup with Lisa Bonet. But now his close friendship with Zoe Kravitz was being questioned. Did she really mean what she said, or was this all just another case of internet hysteria? The truth would shock everyone. As the saying goes, everyone thinks they know the truth until they find out they don't. People read a headline and then watch carefully edited footage to get the full picture. But the problem with stories, especially those made by the problem with the media, is that they almost never tell the whole story. For Zoe Kravitz, Jason Momoa was more than just her stepfather. He wasn't this cold person who pretended to be Lisa Bonet's husband and kept her daughter at a distance. From the moment he came into their lives, he treated Zoe like she was his own daughter. Even though they had a lot in common, people still wanted to believe they didn't have anything in common. Zoe remembers their first meeting and says she was wary and skeptical because she wanted her mother to be happy. She didn't want it, but she had seen how relationships went up and down before, so she knew not to get too involved. Then Jason came along, loud, lively, and impossible to ignore. He wasn't just Lisa's new husband. He was a natural force. He also wasn't trying to win Zoe over, which surprised her. He was himself. She remembers the first time he took her to the beach, and she felt unsure and hesitant. She wasn't into surfing, and she didn't want to be forced to hang out with other people. "You don't have to," he shrugged, and she rolled her eyes. But she still went into the water. She can still feel the waves and hear Jason's voice directing her. She remembers how he yelled and whooped her every time she stayed on the board for more than a few seconds. It wasn't about surfing, it was about something more important. The peace of mind that came from knowing he was there. He wasn't interested because he was her father's replacement or a duty. And he kept showing it. Jason was always in the background at red carpets, interviews, and auditions. She would smile like a proud fan when she won and offer support when she lost. He wasn't just acting like a helpful stepfather, he was one. But the media only saw what they wanted to see, so they decided that Zoe and Jason were dating. Since they weren't seen together as much after Jason and Lisa's breakup, it was only natural that they had grown apart. The fact that Zoe had her own life and work didn't matter, and neither did the fact that they could show they were dating without posting about it. The headlines told their own story of what happened. Did Jason Mammoth break up with Zoe Kravitz and move on? An inside look at Jason Momoa and Zoe Kravitz's cold relationship after Lisa Bonet's death. People were more likely to think that Zoe had quietly stopped talking to Jason and that Jason had moved on. No one wanted to think about the fact that family doesn't just disappear when a marriage ends. The craziest thing was that people really thought Zoe would ever accuse Jason Momoa of being evil. Zoe remembers seeing the video go viral and being twisted and turned into something huge when she said she was just laughing and making a point, but it didn't translate well to the big screen. For those looking for controversy, all of a sudden people who had never met Jason or seen the small but meaningful ways he had changed Zoe's life were sure they knew the truth. She remembered the late-night talks where he taught her about Hollywood and how to deal with celebrities when the cameras weren't rolling. She also remembered how he continued to check in on her and support her no matter what the outside world thought. Jason Momoa's first priority has always been and will always be his family. Zoe Kravitz has lived her whole life in the spotlight. It wasn't her choice or a desire for attention. She was born into a world where everyone could see everything she did. She is the daughter of Lisa Bonet and Lenny Kravitz, and early magazine covers wondered if she would follow in her father's footsteps. Critics are looking at her relationships, career choices, and style as if she were an experiment being observed through a glass. She was never just Zoe, no matter how hard she tried to live her life the way she saw fit. She was always the daughter of someone else. Then Jason came along and the world loved their relationship for years. She was the cool, naturally talented daughter of a fun-loving, extravagant stepfather named Jason. Fans couldn't get enough of that. People loved seeing them together at red carpet events, family gatherings, and premieres. Jason would proudly call her my baby girl. But there was a catch. As soon as they announced their divorce, Zoe lost more than just her stepfather. She also lost the carefully constructed story that had been surrounding their relationship. Suddenly, every conversation, or lack thereof, became a news story, and Jason Momoa was taken off of the show. Because Lisa Bonet and Zoe Kravitz are no longer together, they haven't been seen together in months, this has hurt the child's mother-daughter bond. Zoe kept talking to Jason, but that didn't matter. Relationships change, and he was still a part of her life, even if she wasn't taking pictures with him. It didn't matter. People would make up a story if there wasn't one because they needed one. At first, she didn't pay attention to it. The media machine was something she had long ago. It wasn't just the tabloids that were involved. Fans and strangers alike bombarded her with questions on social media, as if she owed them an answer. Why haven't you posted about Jason? Why weren't you at his movie premiere? Did something happen between you two? Those who knew her weren't asking the questions. They were followers who thought they had a right to know the truth because they knew about her life and made up their own. The paparazzi were the worst. They were always following her around, but their interest in her grew a lot after the divorce. They were looking for proof that something was wrong, anything that would give them a chance to make a new scandal. Cameras were waiting for her every time she went outside, hoping she would make a mistake by asking her questions like, "Do you still talk to Jason? Did the divorce make things awkward? Are you glad you don't have to deal with him anymore?" Jason were a burden, as if their relationship had been short-lived and fragile. Then there was the interview, which poked fun at Jason's extravagant behavior. Without thinking, she rolled her eyes, laughed, and said the words that would wake up the whole city. But the media wasn't normal. The comment was all over the news and quickly turned into something hateful. The next morning there was chaos. The interviewer's laughter didn't matter. The damage was done. While reading the endless replies, she felt a familiar annoyance. The truth didn't matter to anyone. They wanted a show. Drama was what they wanted, and they would make it if they couldn't find it. She threw down her phone with a groan. For her whole life, she had been defined by the media and stories told by people who didn't know her. The media, on the other hand, had never understood one thing she did. No matter how many articles, photos, or headlines they changed, there was no doubt about who was family for Jason Momoa. Jason's public image, Jason Momoa was a crazy person who seemed bigger than life to everyone else. He was a warrior, an action hero, a giant with tattoos and wild hair who looked like he stepped out of a story because of how he controlled a room without even trying, and his wild energy and thunderous laughter were all things that people saw him as. On the other hand, people found it easier to change someone's appearance the more famous they were in Hollywood. He stood out for his rebellious attitude. The well-groomed star who played the game and kept his personal life quiet wasn't him. Jason was a rough, erratic man who would act like he was from another planet, show up to events barefoot, and drink a Guinness in the middle of an interview. This made him a target, but it also made him fascinating. Throughout the years, the media said he was too crazy, intense, and careless. Rumors started to spread that he was hard to work with, had a temper, and caused his marriage to end. But there was no solid evidence to support any of them. His roles as Conan the Barbarian, Aquaman, and Khal Drogo only added to the false beliefs. People started to confuse him with the violent, powerful characters he played, making it hard to tell the difference between fact and fiction. Tabloids made up their own stories about him. If Jason was seen drinking alone, it was seen as a sign of an unhinged downward spiral. If he laughed too loudly, it was seen as evidence of an uncontrollable personality. And if he stayed quiet, it was seen as proof that something dark was lurking beneath the surface. The world had already decided who Jason Momoa was, whether it was true or not. Zoe had seen how people saw him and how they made snap judgments before ever getting to know him. Years ago, she remembered going to as the cameras followed his every move, and news stories accused him of being intrusive. Everyone was determined to see something different. But the truth was that Jason had always been loving. The media stuck to the image they had made of him, even after he broke up with Lisa Bonet. They used his pain to turn his peaceful moments into stories of instability, making the father who had raised and protected his family for years look like the bad guy. Even though they weren't related by blood, Zoe knew the real Jason, the man who would sit on the floor and comb his daughter's hair, the man who cried when his son was born, and the man who still called her my baby girl. Jason Momoa was not the person they said they were, no matter what the world wanted to think. Zoe Kravitz has done a lot of interviews over the years, but she has always liked late-night talk shows because they were a change of pace from the usually serious conversations about her personal or professional life were lighthearted and funny. This particular evening, she was feeling good and was relaxing in her chair while the MC made jokes and the audience laughed. Eventually, the subject of Jason Momoa came up, as it always did, even though he was no longer with her mother. He captivated the world, and many people were interested in their relationship. The host, clearly excited to get to the subject, smiled and leaned in. Forward, Zoe, you grew up with one of Hollywood's most passionate men. How would you describe him? Is he that big and loud all the time? Zoe laughed, already knowing the answer. They had asked her the same questions 100 times before because of how over-the-top Jason was. Oh yes, she said, rolling her eyes amusingly. He is a walking force of nature. You walk into a room and without warning, Jason appears with his arms spread wide and his voice booming. You know that you're going to be thrown into a bear hug whether you like it or not. The host laughed and nodded. Yes, he does have that kind of enthusiasm. Is it ever turned off by him? Zoe smiled slyly and laughed at the joke. Her eyes grew very big, her voice dropped to a harsh growl, and she stood taller. Never, Zoe, she said. He says that all the time, my dear, my darling daughter. And I was like, please, Jason, I just woke up. The audience kept laughing as she raised her hands to emphasize her point. The host smiled and said, that's exactly him. He must be so exhausting. Zoe shrugged and said, oh yeah, he's an evil piece of shit. Still enjoying the funny vibe of the moment, she shook her head and started laughing right away. Jason was the opposite of evil, but his strong personality made him easy to make fun of, and the audience screamed with laughter. The host laughed with her before quickly changing the subject to something else. It was just a joke about someone she loved, like family. The moment went by without any problems. The show ended without any problems. And Zoe left the studio with a smile on her face after a fun interview. She had no idea what was going to happen next. When she got home, the internet was already on fire with clips of her interview. But they weren't the whole thing. There was one part where she said, he's an evil piece of... It was just those words said over and over again with no emojis or jokes. Twitter went crazy with reactions like, Zoe Kravitz calls Jason Momoa evil on live TV, exposing him. Fans were left speechless, and the jokes had disappeared within hours. The internet had decided that Jason Momoa's silence spoke volumes, since it had never been his style to respond to rumors. He had worked in Hollywood long enough to know that the media lived on them. He was making up stories and twisting reality so much that it was almost unintelligible. The news about Zoe's supposed confession caught his eye, but he didn't say anything about it. Didn't stir. If he said a word to the drama-loving internet, it would only fuel the flames. Jason did what he usually did and focused on what was important instead of reacting. He taught his kids to respect the earth, showed them how to make a fire, and took them on hikes during the day. His most recent environmental project was a cleanup. Concerns about the campaign to save marine life were what he wrote about. He wasn't interested in online outrage, but in a society where assumptions were common, his silence only made things worse. Both critics and fans looked at everything he did and thought, is Jason Momoa making a silent confession by refusing to refute Zoe's accusations? But some people could see through the fuss. Loyal fans stood up for him and criticized that Zoe was joking when she said, "Don't try to make family members your enemies." Others pointed out that Jason and Zoe had never had a disagreement and that Jason had always been a good father figure to Zoe. Zoe saw how the internet turned her words into something ugly. She thought her message would be clear, but now they were arguing about Jason's personality as if she had said something bad. Slowly, she realized she hadn't meant to hurt anyone. Jason wasn't just her ex-stepfather, he was a family member. She felt sick to her stomach at the thought of people questioning his morals because of what she had said. She thought about whether to step in and clarify for the first time since the interview aired. Would it matter? The internet tends to dry up quickly. Tomorrow, something new will replace today's controversy. Waiting it out could have, even though she cared and Jason didn't, she still had the unsettling feeling that she had contributed to something unfair. The truth comes out, Zoe Kravitz had been watching the internet ruin a very important relationship for days when people started judging Jason Momoa's character based on a few out-of-context comments. What started as a joke turned nasty, and she was hoping that the craze would go away on its own, but it didn't. People were demanding answers. The discussions continued, and the Zoe posted a picture of herself and Jason on Instagram from years ago, laughing and sitting on his shoulders when she was younger. She wrote next to the picture, "Let me make things clear. Jason Momoa is one of the sweetest souls I have ever met in my life since the day he became part of my family." The joke she made in an interview was clearly misunderstood, and people started questioning the character of a man who had only recently become a father. Once the internet went crazy with, "You're an awesome person, Jason, can we all just relax now?" Zoe's fans flooded the comments section, relieved to hear the truth directly from her. Some criticized the media for stirring up needless controversy, while others said they felt bad for judging people too quickly. Instead of being a scandal, the story changed to show how quickly the internet can go crazy when given new information. Jason's response was the best. A few hours later, he shared Zoe's message with the caption, "Gosh, and here I was, prepared to welcome my time as a villain." He also attached a ridiculous photoshopped picture of himself wearing a dramatic black cloak that made him look like a villain from a comic book. The post went viral right away, and the argument turned into a joke. People praised him for handling the situation with grace and humor, and they shared the picture, which made Zozo laugh so hard she couldn't believe she was seeing it. No amount of drama on the internet could erase Jason's identity. He had never needed defense. Knowing that she had helped clear the air made her feel better, though. Later that night, Jason texted her saying, "Don't worry, Zozo, but you still owe me for the villain edit." She smiled as the weight off her shoulders. Jason was, and always would be, family, no matter what the internet said. Zoe felt relieved as the online frenzy died down now that everyone knew the truth. Jason had, as usual, made the besides being funny, the whole thing had made one important point clear. Their friendship could not be broken, no matter what the outside world thought. By twisting her words into a story that never happened, the media tried to make Jason look like someone he wasn't. But those who knew them well knew the truth. Jason had stood by her from the start, not only as her mother's husband, but also as a true friend. Titles and standards of people have never affected their relationship, and Jason's relationship hadn't changed at all, even after they broke up. When Jason and Zoe finally got to meet up in person that weekend, it was just the two of them. It wasn't for a social media moment or to fix things. As soon as he saw her, he embraced her and joked, "You really called me an evil piece of work on TV?" She laughed and said, "You're dramatic." He tightened his grip on her while laughing, "I'm damn right." It was over in an instant. It had always been family, with no tension or controversy. What do you think about Jason Momoa's response? Was humor the best way to handle the situation, or should he have taken it more seriously? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.